Hello students, today we are going to study the chapter from your detailed textbook from the diary of Anne Frank. Chapter sketch is given here. In the chapter from the diary of Anne Frank, the writer Anne Frank tells us about her true companion diary, and she writes everything about her life in this diary and considers it as her true friend. At the time of invasion of German over Holland, her family hid itself. At that time, she started to write in her diary. She spent her adolescent years hidden from outside world, and her diary kept all her secrets. Young Girl is a long autobiography of Anne Frank. The part required for you is only one chapter from that long autobiography. The main characters involved in this autobiography are Anne Frank, her grandmother, her father Otto Frank, and her teacher Mr. Keesing. So the characters who included in this chapter are Anne Frank, Margaret Frank her sister, Otto Frank her father, Edith Frank her mother, Mr. Keesing her maths teacher, and her grandmother. So the main character of this chapter is Anne Frank. She was a Jewish girl born on 12th June 1929. She lived with her parents in Frankfurt, Germany until she was 4, and after emigrated to Holland, her mother Edith went with her father to Holland. And she and her sister went to Aachen to stay with her grandmother. Later she joined in the Montessori school and till 6 she stayed there and did not have any other friends than her diary. She wanted her personal feelings and thoughts to be written in the diary because she believed the diary than any other else. When she got a diary as 13th birthday gift from her father, she decided to make it her close friend and she named it Kitty. And she considered the diary as her best friend. Her diary would keep her personal notings as a secret and would not react like other people. She entered in her diary her fear, loneliness, and general views of life at her age. Margot Frank was Anne's sister and she is 3 years older than Anne. Another special character in this chapter is Mr. Keesing, her maths teacher. He was a strict person and he is an old fashioned teacher and is very dedicated. He believes in a fact that teachers should not be disturbed while teaching. He is an intelligent and skilled teacher. He was annoyed with Anne because she is very talkative. He gives several warnings to Anne, showing he is a cool teacher, but he gives her several punishments as homework. But Mr. Keesing failed to stop Anne's habit of chattering in the class. With the intention of making a mockery of Anne, he gave an essay to write on topic quack 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 Mrs. Chatterbox. Luckily, Mr. Keesing took the joke in right way. He read the essay aloud to the whole class, adding his comments. Since then, she was allowed to talk and have not assigned any more homework. But he continued making jokes of her. The points which are there in this character sketch will be explained later. Otto Frank is Anne's father. He is a Jewish businessman who left Germany after Hitler's rise to power, hoping to find refuge in Holland. He is one of the kindest, smartest, most gentle, and most thoughtful fathers imaginable. He always supports Anne and frequently takes her side during family arguments. He is generous, kind, and level headed. Mrs. Frank, Anne's mother, she is the source of many conflicts with Anne during the 2 years that the family spends in hiding. Edith Frank is the name of Otto Frank's wife. So let's move on to the story from the diary of Anne Frank. Hello students, we are going to study the chapter from the diary of Anne Frank. That is the 4th chapter of your detailed textbook. In this chapter, Anne Frank's diary is being focused. She loves her diary a lot than anything else in her world because it was gifted by her father. You know the special political background of that situation as the World War was going on. So she has the courage to speak out all her emotions only to her diary. She has a loving family and she has friends too, but they were not that much close to her to pour out her emotions. You know, a 13-year-old girl will have her own imaginative thoughts related to her mind. So, Kitty, the diary, she loved a lot. She says in this first part of your chapter, paper has more patience than people. You know, paper will not respond, but people will respond. So if she tells a lot of things related to her mind, she will be safe only if she writes in the paper, because paper has patience than people. And in the second part, that is in page 51, she introduces her family members: her father Otto Frank, her mother Edith Frank, her sister Margot, and her loving grandmother. Her mother Edith Frank left to Holland with her father, and Margot and Anne Frank went to Aachen to live with her grandmother. She started her schooling, that is, she joined in the Montessori school in Aachen, and till her six years she was there. After that, in the sixth form, in this context, she is speaking about her head mistress, Mrs. Cuperus, and during the time of parting, she was very sad about parting with Mrs. Cuperus. After that, she tries to tell us about her bond of relationship, loving bond of relationship with her grandmother. She loved her grandmother a lot. In 1941, her grandmother fell ill. So she was very sad and she couldn't celebrate her birthday. And in 1942, her grandmother died. At that time, she says in her diary that about a small memorial to her, that she lights a candle in the memory, in the loving memory of her grandmother. So from all this, we come to know her bond of relationship with her grandmother. She missed her grandmother a lot. During the third part of the chapter, that is page number 52, we are introduced to the school of Anne Frank. And in the school, so many children are there as her schoolmates, and there is a meeting going on of the teachers to find who all are going to the next class and who are all going to fail. So there was a commotion in the classroom regarding the decisions of the teachers, and she was demotivated by her schoolmates, because some of them were just discussing about who will pass, who will fail, and such things were discussed by these children. And she actually was afraid of her maths teacher. She was not that much interested in maths. With other teachers, she was getting well with. And Mr. Keesing was a strict teacher who always noted her for her talkative nature, and she was scolded. So once he gave punishment for her. He asked her to write an essay on a topic, chatterbox. So Anne Frank was very confused at first what to write, and she was thinking about that topic a lot. And she says that her mother was a talkative person, so she has inherited that quality of talking. And Anne Frank wrote 3 pages on this, and Mr. Keesing was greatly surprised. And again, in the second period, you know what happened? Mr. Keesing started noticing her talkativeness again and gave her another punishment. This time he gave her a topic, incorrigible chatterbox. So she wrote 2 pages for that topic. And that time also Mr. Keesing was not that much satisfied with her talkative nature. He actually noted her for her talkative nature, and during this context she says that she inherited it from her mother. And she says that while she wrote her first essay also, she told talkativeness is the nature of students. So she was supporting the talkative nature of the children in her writings. So for the third time also, she was noted for her talkativeness, and this time the topic was quack, 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 Mistress Chatterbox. At that time, actually she lost all her stuff to write the essay. But at that time, she was helped by one of her friends, Sani. What did Sani do? You know, Sani was good in writing poetry, and Sani decided to form a story on the basis of the topic which was given. And in that, a mother duck is there, a father swan is there, and 3 ducklings are there. And you know, the ducklings will always make noisy quack, quack, quack. And they wrote a very good poem on that. In that poem, the story outline was that the father swan gets angry and he beated 3 ducklings, and these 3 ducklings died. And when she gave this poem to Mr. Keesing, he was actually greatly impressed, and he was at that time he thought that this talkative nature of this girl is not going to get finished. So he decided not to give her more punishments. After that, she didn't get any punishments from Mr. Keesing. And Mr. Keesing always teased her but didn't give any punishments because she already took it in a jovial mood and she has written it in a hilarious way. So Mr. Keesing was very impressed about the quality of her, and she was happy when she convinced her teacher Mr. Keesing by her. For further understanding, let us look into the chapter part-wise. Anne Frank's first entry into the diary. Anne Frank, a 13-year-old girl, was gifted a diary by her father, so she decided to write in her diary, which she considered to be her best friend in loneliness, and named it Kitty. She began writing in June 1942. In her first entry, she expressed her desire to confide everything to the diary as she had not been able to do so to anyone else. She felt that paper had more patience than people. Secondly, she thought that nobody would be interested in her diary as she was a small girl. Paper had more patience than people is a very important remark by Anne Frank. Now you can see the father Otto Frank, Margaret, her sister, and Anne Frank, and her mother Edith Frank in these pictures. Anne called her father as the most adorable person. He was 36 when he married her mother, who was just 25. Her mother, Edith Hollander Frank, went to Holland with Otto Frank. She has an elder sister, Margot. Along with Margot, Anne was sent to Aachen to stay with their grandmother. They lived in Frankfurt for some time, but as they were Jewish, they had to migrate to Holland for refuge later. This is Anne's schooling time. We can see Anne Frank sitting there. She was sent to Montessori Nursery School. She stayed there until she was 6. At her farewell, she and her headmistress, Mrs. Cuperus, had tears in their eyes. That means she had a special affinity towards Mrs. Cuperus. From the chapter, you have understood that her grandmother had a key role in her life. Her grandmother's death was a great shock for her. In the summer of 1941, her grandmother fell ill. She had to be operated upon. So Anne's birthday passed with little celebration. Later she died in January 1942. It gave Anne a shock and she did not write her diary in that period. But after that she wrote again as she thought of her grandmother's love and affection. The birthday celebration in 1942 was intended to make up for the other, and grandma's candle was lit along with the rest. Next is her view about teachers. Her view about teachers and class. Anne was not good at maths, so she and her friends were always worried about it, and they discussed who would go to the next class and who would not. They had bets with other boys, but she was sure that she would go to the next class but had a little worry about maths. She always considered teachers to be the most unpredictable creatures on the earth, so she told her friends not to lose hope. There are 9 teachers, 7 men and 2 women. She was in good terms with all the teachers except Mr. Keesing, the maths teacher. Next is an important part of your chapter as far as exams are concerned. It is the punishment by Mr. Keesing. Punishment by Mr. Keesing. Anne was a good student and had a good relationship with all the teachers except Mr. Keesing. He was a dull person who taught her maths. He was always annoyed by her talkative nature. After several warnings, he assigned extra homework to her, an essay on the subject, a chatterbox. She scribbled the title, and when she reached home after finishing all her works, she decided to write the essay on chatterbox. She thought of writing convincing arguments to prove the necessity of talking. Thus, she wrote 3 pages. She argued that talking is a student's trait that is incurable. Since her mother is talkative, she too had inherited those traits, but she added on that she would keep the nature under the control of herself. When Mr. Keesing read this, he started laughing. But during the next class, he assigned Anne with next punishment of writing another essay on topic, an incorrigible chatterbox. and did that also. Mr. Keesing had nothing to complain for this. During the third lesson, Mr. Keesing gave third punishment for talking in class. This time, it is to write an essay on quack, quack, quack. She got exhausted. She got help from Sani, who is good at poetry, to write the essay from beginning to end in verse. And Anne felt happy as she was able to write well with the ridiculous subject given to her by Keesing to make joke of her, but it turned on him. Luckily, Mr. Keesing took the joke in right way. He read the essay aloud to the whole class, adding his comments. Since then, she was allowed to talk and have not assigned any more homework, but he continued making jokes of her. Next is chapter highlights. It will be easy for you to just go through these points. Anne Frank lived in Holland after Hitler invaded. His father and mother left her and her sister to her grandma. She was gifted a diary on her 13th birthday. She named it Kitty and made it her best friend in her loneliness. She wrote every problem and happenings in her diary. She was very close to her grandma. After the death, she felt very much alone. They lived in hiding for many years to survive. She was lovable of every teacher except Mr. Keesing, who taught Max. Mr. Keesing got annoyed with her talkative nature. He punished her by giving her extra homework many a time. Her essay in verse form on topic quack, 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 said Mr. Chatterbox, humiliated Mr. Keesing. He allowed her to talk and relieved her from any extra homework. And this is the overview of the chapter. In the examination point of view, there are 4 factors students must keep in mind to score well. 20% are equally contributed to grammar, understanding of chapter, and to be specific. First 20% understanding of chapter, that means you must understand the chapter thoroughly. Next 20% is to the grammar. Next 20%, that is be specific, that means write to the point. Above all, the key factor that has to be concentrated is time management. That can be easily achieved if you write to the point. The questions that may arise are extract based questions, short answer type questions, and long answer type. The mark distributions are also shown here. Here an extract based question is given and you can answer it. There are 4 options from which you have to select the correct answer. These are the short answer type questions from this lesson. What makes writing in a diary a strange experience for Anne Frank? Writing a diary is a strange experience for Anne Frank because of 2 reasons. The first reason is she has not written anything before. The second reason is the apparent disinterest which most of the people would show in musings of a 13-year-old girl. The rest are also relevant questions. Why does Anne want to keep a diary? Why did Anne think she could confide more in her diary than in people? Why does Anne provide a brief sketch of her life, etc. These are some other questions which are relevant. Questions related to Mr. Keesing are very important. Here is a long answer type question. This question has been asked for several times. This is very important question. You can go through that. Paper has more patience than people. Elucidate. Long answer type, another one. Give a brief sketch of Anne's life. As an answer to this question, you have to include all the relevant points which I have given in the above slide related to Mr. Keesing's punishment. The new words related to page 50, musings, listless, brooding, stiff-backed, grandly, prompted, imagination. Words in page number 51, plunge, adorable, emigrated, plunked down, farewell, celebration, intended, solemn, dedication. Page number 52, quacking, silly, staked, pleading, glances, outbursts, dummies, unpredictable, foggy, assigned, chatterbox, tucked, ramble on, convincing. Page 54, quite on the contrary. So thank you, my dear students. I hope all of you understood the lesson very well. Please go through the PDF file and study it well.